They act like they don't care, like your absence means nothing. But deep down, beneath the armor, beneath the silence, beneath the distance, there is a fear that terrifies the avoidant. Not fear of you leaving the room, not fear of an argument, not even fear of love itself. It is the fear of losing you completely, forever. And the irony? They only begin to feel it once they sense you're no longer chasing, no longer waiting, no longer holding the door open. That's when everything shifts. That's when the avoidant starts to panic, quietly, secretly, but powerfully. The turning point they never expected. Avoidants spend much of their relational life believing they hold the upper hand. They pull away, and you reach for them. They create distance, and you try to close the gap. They retreat into silence, and you fill it with words, apologies, and reassurance. This pattern builds their illusion of safety, because as long as you are the one chasing, they can keep love at arm's length, close enough to feel wanted, but far enough to feel safe. But here's the paradox. The moment you stop playing your role, the entire system cracks. When you stop chasing, when you begin to step back, when your energy is no longer orbiting around them, the avoidant feels a disturbance they are not prepared for. It's subtle at first, a pause in their rhythm. They notice you didn't text first. They notice you didn't ask where they were last night. They notice silence, not filled with your usual pursuit, but left untouched. And this unsettles them, because for the first time, they realize you might not always be there. For the avoidant, this is the beginning of fear. It isn't loud. It isn't confessed. It shows up in whispers. A late-night thought, a sudden urge to check your social media, a strange irritation when you seem busy with someone else. They don't call it fear. They may not even know what it is. But the body knows. The nervous system knows. And it sends alarms that even the avoidant cannot completely ignore. What makes this turning point so powerful is that it disrupts the entire script the avoidant has relied on. Their safety came from knowing you would chase. Their confidence came from your consistency. Their control came from your willingness to hold on tighter. The more they pulled away. But now, you are no longer holding the same position, and in the empty space you've left behind, the avoidant begins to feel not freedom, but loss. This is the moment they begin to fear losing you. It doesn't come with an apology. It doesn't arrive with a grand confession. It comes in small, almost invisible behaviors. They start watching. They start noticing. They start to hover, not openly, but in shadows. The one who once acted indifferent now quietly monitors the space between you. Why? Because silence they once craved suddenly feels dangerous. Distance, which once gave them safety, now feels like risk, and the realization hits them. If they don't do something, you may slip away completely. The subtle panic behind their calm exterior. On the surface, nothing looks different. The avoidant still wears their mask of calm, still acts as though nothing touches them, still presents that cool, collected image that says, "I'm fine. I don't need anyone. I don't care." But inside, their nervous system is stirring. A quiet panic brews beneath the surface. Because here's the truth. Avoidants are not immune to love. They are not indifferent to connection. They are not untouched by your presence in their life. They just learned, a long time ago, to suppress their longing, to bury it deep enough that it wouldn't hurt them. But when they sense you pulling away, those old defenses stop working as well. Something raw breaks through, and though they may never admit it, they begin to fear the very thing they've been pushing you toward. Your absence. At first, It shows up in restlessness. They feel irritated, but can't say why. They scroll their phone, but find no comfort. They sleep, but their dreams are uneasy. Their mind circles back to you, not with warmth, but with questions. Why haven't they called? Who are they with? Why are they quieter than usual? The avoidant doesn't call this fear. They call it curiosity, or annoyance, or even anger. But beneath those labels is something they don't want to face, a growing awareness that they could lose you. And here is where their silence begins to shift. The avoidant, who once thrived on silence, suddenly finds it unbearable. Your silence becomes louder than their own. Your distance feels heavier than the walls they built. It is ironic, isn't it? They built silence to protect themselves, but when you stop filling it, the silence becomes the very thing that haunts them. This is why the avoidance behavior often starts to contradict itself. One moment, they still seem distant, pulling away, keeping answers short, acting unavailable. The next moment, they drop hints, send a late-night message, or test the waters with subtle bids for your attention. It confuses you. It looks inconsistent, but what you are witnessing is their inner conflict spilling into action. On one side, the avoidance still clings to control. On the other, their fear of losing you pushes them to reach out, just enough to feel you're still there. It's not love in its fullest form. It's survival, because for the avoidant, the thought of being left is more terrifying than they will ever admit. But here's the key insight. This fear doesn't turn them into a secure partner overnight. It doesn't erase years of avoidance. It doesn't suddenly open their heart fully. What it does is reveal their humanity, that beneath the distance, beneath the walls, beneath the silence, the avoidant is just as afraid of loss as anyone else. And in their own complicated way, they begin to fight to keep you near, not with flowers, not with declarations, not with dramatic gestures, but with subtle moves, tiny reaches, half steps forward, like watching your story online, like asking a casual question that masks a deeper concern, like appearing in places you didn't expect to see them. They will never call it pursuit, but it is their version of it. This is the paradox of the avoidant. They fear closeness, but they also fear loss. They run from intimacy, but they also run from abandonment. And when they sense you are slipping away, that second fear screams louder. It pushes them, hesitantly, awkwardly, and often too late, back toward you, not because they are ready, not because they are healed, but because losing you feels like a death they cannot face. This is the hidden panic behind their calm exterior. They will never show it directly. They will never confess it openly. But if you look closely, you'll see the cracks. And in those cracks, you'll glimpse the truth. The avoidant does care. They just don't know how to admit it. Until they fear it might be too late. The subtle strategies they use to pull you back. When fear sets in, the avoidant does not suddenly become expressive. They don't rush in with words of love or sweeping apologies. That would feel too risky, too exposing, too much like surrender. Instead, they lean on what feels safer. Indirect moves, half gestures, tactics that allow them to test your closeness without admitting their need for you. One of the first strategies is monitoring you from a distance. They watch your stories. They check your online activity. They scroll your posts, but rarely comment. It looks passive, but it's not. It's their way of staying tethered to you without stepping into the vulnerability of reaching out directly. For them, just knowing you're still there, still active, still visible, still moving through life, calms their inner panic. The second strategy is casual contact, a text with no real purpose, an emoji, a link to something random, a hey at an odd hour. It feels meaningless on the surface, but beneath it, it carries weight. The avoidant is checking. Are you still available? Do you still respond? Is the door still open? It's not what you want. You want depth. You want honesty. You want them to finally say what's in their heart. But for the avoidant, this is as close as they can get, without setting off their own alarms. The third strategy is inconsistency. One moment, they may seem cold, keeping distance, acting disinterested, as though nothing has changed. The next, they do something surprisingly tender. A compliment, a memory shared, a small act of care, slipped between walls of indifference. This push-pull dynamic is not designed to hurt you. It is the avoidant, trying to balance two fears, the fear of losing you and the fear of being too close to you. So they sway back and forth, never landing fully on one side. To you, it feels like whiplash. To them, it feels like survival. The fourth strategy is presence without words. The avoidant may show up in places where you'll notice them, at mutual gatherings, at familiar spots, even online spaces where your paths cross. They may not approach you directly. They may not say much at all, but their presence speaks. It says, I'm still here. I haven't gone far. I don't want to lose sight of you. It's their silent language of fear. The fifth strategy is subtle reminders of connection. They may bring up an inside joke, a shared song, a memory you had together. Not too much, never too vulnerable, but just enough to stir your emotions, to remind you of the bond that still exists. It's their way of weaving threads, hoping the connection doesn't completely unravel. Notice the pattern here. Every move is cautious. Every gesture is restrained. Every step forward is followed by a pause, because while their fear of losing you pushes them closer, their fear of intimacy still holds them back. They want you to feel their presence, but not to expect too much from it. They want you to know they care, but not demand proof of it. They want to keep you near, but still guard their independence. This is the tightrope they walk. This is the strategy of the avoidant. In panic mode, and here's the irony, from the outside, it may not look like love. It may not look like effort. It may not look like much at all. But in their world, these small gestures are monumental, because for someone who has spent their whole life running from closeness, even the smallest reach toward you is an act of courage. So when the avoidant fears losing you, they don't confess, they don't declare, they don't rush, they maneuver, they hint, they circle around you like a shadow, never too far, never too near. It is their strange way of saying, I don't know how to love you openly, but I also don't know how to let you go. When their fear backfires, here's the paradox. The moment the avoidant feels their fear of losing you is also the moment they often sabotage the very connection they're afraid of losing. It's not intentional cruelty. It's not indifference. It's the result of a nervous system that doesn't know how to handle closeness without panicking. At first, their fear makes them reach for you, but indirectly, a text, a glance, a subtle reminder of shared history. But almost immediately, the weight of those feelings becomes overwhelming. Fear of rejection, fear of exposure, fear that if they lean in, they will lose control. So they pull back, not because they don't want you, but because wanting you terrifies them. This is where the cycle begins. They draw near to soothe their fear, then withdraw to soothe their panic. Near, far, hot, cold. It's a dance that leaves you spinning. To you, it looks like mixed signals. To them, it feels like survival. But deep down, the fear of losing you means you matter more than they can bear to say. The fear that awakens them. There comes a moment, sometimes quiet, sometimes catastrophic, when the avoidant finally realizes their fear of losing you is no longer theoretical. It's happening. It's real. And they can't stop it. The silence they thought would protect them has pushed you further away. The walls they thought would keep them safe have locked you out. The distance they thought would bring them peace has created the very emptiness they were running from. At first, they fight against this realization. They tell themselves, it's temporary. They'll come back. They've always chased before. It's easier to believe you're just giving them space than to face the truth that you're giving them up. But slowly, reality begins to break through. The texts don't come. The calls don't arrive. The door they assumed you'd keep knocking on remains closed. And for the first time, the avoidant feels what it's like to be on the outside with no guarantee of return. This is when fear becomes undeniable. It shows up in the body, an anxious restlessness, a gnawing ache, a tightness in the chest. They can't sleep. They can't concentrate. They replay conversations, analyzing every word for signs of where things went wrong. They scroll through old messages. They stare at pictures. They hear your voice in their mind, as if it's still in the room. And with every memory, with every absence, the fear grows louder. Not just fear of losing you, but fear of realizing they already did. This is the breaking point, because now they can't hide behind attachment. They can't pretend they didn't care. They can't mask their feelings behind busyness, hobbies, work, or friends, because even in the noise, the silence of your absence is deafening. For many avoidants, this is the first time they confront the depth of their own emotions. Fear has always been their shield. Distance has always been their comfort zone. But now, that shield feels heavy. That comfort zone feels suffocating. That distance feels like exile. Because in choosing safety, they sacrificed connection. And in sacrificing connection, they lost the one person they couldn't afford to lose. Here's where regret begins its slow invasion. Not dramatic, not cinematic, but quiet, persistent, unavoidable. Regret that whispers late at night. What if I had stayed present? What if I had told the truth? What if I had trusted them instead of testing them? These questions are brutal because the answers come with a cost. The cost of realizing you may never return. This is why absence is more powerful than presence. For the avoidant, when you were near, they felt overwhelmed. When you were giving, they felt smothered. When you were loving, they felt threatened. But when you're gone, the very things they resisted become the things they crave. Your warmth, your patience, your steadiness, your love. Fear transforms into clarity. They begin to see that the very behaviors they believed were keeping them safe were actually dismantling the bond. And it terrifies them because the avoidant, for all their running, all their retreating, all their hiding, never stopped longing for connection. They just didn't know how to hold it without feeling consumed. And so the irony emerges. They feared losing freedom, but what they lost was love. They feared being trapped, but what they trapped themselves in was loneliness. They feared rejection, but in pushing you away, they rejected themselves. This is often the turning point, not because avoidance suddenly heal overnight, but because the fear of permanent loss becomes greater than the fear of intimacy. It forces a reckoning, a confrontation with their own patterns, a moment where they have to ask, was protecting myself worth the price I paid? Some avoidants collapse inward at this stage. They double down on their defenses. They pretend they're fine. They numb themselves with distractions, convincing themselves you weren't as important as you were. But others, the ones willing to sit with the discomfort, can begin to shift because fear, when faced, becomes a mirror. And in that mirror, they see not only the loss of you, but the truth about themselves. The fear awakens them to the cost of silence, to the emptiness of distance, to the futility of running. And for some, this awakening is the beginning of change, the beginning of learning that love is not the enemy, that vulnerability is not weakness, that closeness is not a cage, but a doorway to the very freedom they've been chasing in all the wrong places. So when the avoidant starts to fear losing you, know this: it isn't just about you leaving. It's about them finally meeting themselves. It's about them realizing that their greatest enemy was never love. It was fear itself. And sometimes it takes losing you for them to finally see it.